everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Real Tech Talk. I'm here with Jessica Gonzalez. Very excited to learn about her. This is AI at the wheel, scaling trust, growth, and customer success in automotive. Welcome, and thank you for joining us, Jessica.
Hey, how are y'all? Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me. Really excited to be here to talk with you today.
Yes, can you please tell us about your roles and who you are and what you do?
Sure. Like you said, Jessica Gonzalez. I am the VP of Customer Success and the General Manager of Auto for Inform.IQ, which is a fintech organization that we help produce and automate the loan originations process while providing non-documentary and documentary fraud opportunities to really help, the industry from a lender perspective, from a dealer perspective, but overall kind of making sure that we're doing right by consumers and transparency.
That's a mouthful. It's very impressive what you all do. Now I understand why you are so busy. So you've had a front row seat to a lot of digital transformation, auto, finance, customer operations, and everything. How did you end up where you are like today? How did you get here? And what was your path and what does that role really look like in the day to day?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in banking. So I had years at Visa, really kind of consultative work, did a lot of digital Visa, really went through the organization over a 10-year span. Ended up at Santander Consumer, where I did operational strategy, led a group of team that was responsible for automation center excellence, upfront originations, customer service, fraud. So really focused on providing support for executives in the way that they would want to. So the best way to say that is that everybody was very busy doing their BAU, onboarding loans, doing all the things, QC, everything else. So my team would come in and really understand kind of from the operations perspective, how could we improve what we're doing on a day-to-day basis and kind of think out of the side of the box. A lot of the banking industry and really in auto is like you do the same thing over and over again because you've done it that way forever and ever. And no one really starts like kind of has the time really to stand back and say, well, why do we do it this way, and is there a better way to be doing it? So that was what my team was responsible for doing, from a strategy perspective, and I really loved doing that. That really expanded into me supporting the digital book of work, and I went into what Santander was working on was their digital platform with AutoFi, really in their dealer portfolio and kind of how they do business on a digital retailing service platform. So love that. And then, COVID happened. We were working a ton. It's a very, very demanding job. And so ultimately I took some time off. I had already been talking to Magdalena and Justin, who are the co-founder of Informed. Magdalena, very impressive woman, immigrant, one of the first initial investors in Salesforce. And she was my mentor. And she was like, well, why don't you come look, talk to Inform, see how it's going. And ultimately, I went to a spin class. I read her book and or listened to her book during spin class, and I was just impressed. She was just like such an amazing woman, such like cool things that she was doing. Her background just really resonated with what I was like. I can learn a lot and see what's out there. I had never gone into really a sales role, so where I first started. I reported to our CRO, and so I kind of was a little bit hesitant in that aspect. But ultimately, what I do on a day to day basis is really what I used to do for all lenders now, right? I'm very consultative. My team now, we didn't really have a true customer success team or, account management team. So my team is really responsible for the day to day relationship and ensuring that, the customers get ROI very quickly. But we very much have a strategy hat on, operational, from the perspective of making sure that we can expand how they're using the technology and that the technology is really benefiting them from day one. But then also, you're getting more automation, you're actually using it, being able to service a customer and be able to utilize it in the way that your like technology is able to. So every, auto lender does things a little bit different. Their end goal is the same, right? They want to bring on more deals, less risk, less fraud, all of that good stuff. But everybody's technology stack is different. Everybody's kind of needle in the haystack, kind of where they want to find opportunity is different. Their market is different. And so even though everyone's kind of using Informed, they're using it in different ways to make sure that their executive priorities are in line with what they really want to achieve. So if they want more capture, if they want a better dealer experience, we have dealer tools. If they're really focused on mitigating fraud, we go from the fraud perspective. If they really want to bring on a lot of additional volume without having to go out and hire a ton of people, or if they have a short bench and they want to be able to scale up and down. We really talk about the automation, kind of our bread and butter, which is automating the loan originations process. So the stare and compare that funders and underwriters do.
Gosh, yeah, that is impressive. And if anything, it's a linear move, but then the automotive is starving for business individuals and people from the banking industry and all that to really help and empower them. Do you see a big difference in the calling of what it needs and how you transitioned?
Yeah, like I said, at first I was a little bit like hesitant because it's very different being from the banking side and then going to conferences and then being kind of a vendor going to conferences afterwards. You're kind of like, and I'm pretty shy, even though I'm kind of an extrovert. I do like, I'm not the type that's going to go into a conference and be like, oh my God, hi, and go up to meet people that I don't know. I'm very much like, when there's a presence or a meeting, I can definitely own in the room at that instance, but I'm not going out and just like actively like in my head like a salesperson. And so it was really kind of getting over the fact that it's just people doing business, and ultimately the way that I feel very comfortable now is that I do that we're bringing a lot of value, that we're really changing the industry, that we're not just some vendor that's coming in and playing in this space and then walking out. I really see our customers as long-term partners, that we're really adding value. Like I said, I truly think we're changing the industry. I believe in our product. And I think that really resonates, is that I would use the product. And, we have a really strong retention rate with our customers, 99%. The only customers that we've lost are those that are no longer originating within the organizations. Really focused on making sure that we have that really high, retention rate for the customers, that they're seeing the value, and, having those customers that are really large, being able to take the stage with us or talk for us or be able to have references, I think is really critical, especially in auto where everybody knows everybody. Now, the point is that you can pick up the phone and talk to somebody that's one of our customers. Somebody probably that has had experience with us, and so it makes it a lot easier to say like, hey, we're bringing value and we're not just trying to pitch something and walk away.
No, I love that. I love how genuine you are about it too, and so forthcoming. And with the industry changing so fast, like events like the National Automotive Dealer Association, I was really excited to hear about that. So I would love to highlight, your experience and involvement, and how was that received, this year? Have you gone in the years past, or is this kind of a newer move for you in this trade show?
Yeah, so we have attended NADA before, several years back, and we've always attended AFSA. We're part of the board membership for AFSA, and I work on the GNI board as well. But from a perspective of NADA, we were really there to support our lenders. In all honesty, once you've talked to dealers, once you understand a dealer perspective, you're currently out there and you're supporting your lenders. They're there busy with all of the things that they want to do for their dealers, and so I'm kind of just a support tool, not so much really, bringing in any new clients or anything like that, but really attending, their events, making sure that I understand what their dealers are looking for right now, understanding what their, next, big thing is for 2027, and making sure that their dealers are happy and satisfied with, whatever digital or automation service that we're providing for them.
Is there anything that stood out to you this year, like distinctly?
I mean, I think there was always tons of fun events. In Vegas, you're exhausted. We did attend AFSA. So I was in Vegas from Sunday to like Friday, and so it was a very exhausting event daytime right in Vegas. And I'm like always like, I'm too old for this. Like we should not be back to back to back. But it's really a cool and unique experience just because there is so many people in the field. There's so many dealers, lenders that it's really exciting. Though that week you get done so much business because it's really, still a people relationship business. And so seeing that many people eye to eye and everybody excited and talking. And like I said, I think from my perspective, it's being there, helping support our lenders, making sure that I understand what their dealers are looking for from a product perspective and like kind of new, and also making them feel comfortable with, dealers are still kind of like, at NADA, you see a ton of cool things. You see tons of cool vehicles, and everybody's talking about AI, everybody's talking about fraud, and you're kind of just like overwhelmed of like, what does that really mean for me as a dealer? What does that really mean for me as a lender? And I think it's really important to say like, hey, this is a lot of chaos, but this is how you can use it in a day-to-day situation. This is how we can be helpful for you, versus just like the cool, lights and, and cool vehicles and all the cool stuff that's out there. Yeah.
Did you find like there was more of a topic of discussion that was talked more often than not with dealers and lenders when you were in the booth? Did you find any like consistency or like repetitive things that you heard, or was it all pretty much, situational, like all individual?
I think that, transformation is always talked about really highly. I think the kind of change in landscape in my perspective is that everybody is more seeing that like a fraud network is very valuable to dealers as well as lenders. And I think that's kind of a change in the market. Before, everybody knew like, hey, there's like fraud problems happening, but hey, well, it's maybe a dealership issue, or maybe it's a lender, like one off synthetic IDs. It's like a very specific area. Versus now, I think that everybody kind of realizes that without having the communication, having kind of those joint opportunities, joint calls, and having the network is really critical to be able to make a true change in the industry versus kind of, looking like, hey, I'm trying to, stop it, but not as proactive as we could be. And I think that that's kind of a new thing that's coming out within the market.
Absolutely. Do you find dealers being more curious, more cautious, or overwhelmed by AI, or are they all kind of like, okay, I'm ready to adopt?
I think it's very much like right and left, right? You have some lenders that are some dealers that are really excited about AI, and then you have some that are like, I don't want it, and they associate AI with like chatbots, like like talking like robots, and they're like, I don't want to do that. I really want my people. And I always tell them like, hey, there's a good reason for AI, and then there's not so good reasons for AI, right? Like I still don't like getting a call center that routes me to a million different robots. Like that's not a good experience, right? Like I also, yeah, like I don't want to do that. I don't want to push zero, like the meme that's like representative, representative. Like I definitely don't want to do that. But I also am at the age where I don't want to be on the phone either. Like I'd rather do something through a chat or through a text. And so I think, meeting people where they're at is really critical for dealerships. So, being able to have a digital retailing platform, being able to serve online. Most things are still happening online. People are doing more research for their dealers, for their vehicles online. And so being able to keep up with that market is really critical. And then also knowing that there's still, you're going to close a lot of deals in person, that people ultimately are going to get into the field and, want to be able to see the car, test drive the car. And so I think it's kind of merging both of those experiences of, there's different types of people, different generations that are purchasing vehicles, and what that means for your dealership and how you want to utilize that technology. So it's going to be a personal decision, right? Like, how do you want your customers to feel when they're going to your dealership? How do you want them to feel when they walk into, your dealership? There should still be technology helping that experience. But there's ways to do it right, and there's ways to do it, not so great.
Well, I mean, informed IQ, I mean, you operate in a very high stake environment. So with risk, fraud, compliance, trust, that isn't a chatbot AI, like you said. So this is like, get it wrong, it costs millions. And so with the AI, how are you using that and leveraging it for your business to make it easier for your customers?
Yeah. So we use AI that's been around for, a long time for that is really sustainable. It is like very audible, it's trackable. There's no black box in what we're doing, right? We're reading information off of documents, we're identifying things that are off of documents, and then really utilizing the stare and compare. So there's a really good use case for AI, which is like repetitive tasks that no one really wants to be doing. We really use like the cool kind of AI, generative AI, the natural language AI for the use of actually our UI tools for funders and underwriters, so that they can utilize and see that data in a very much like human language. So an example was like, hey, this person actually purchased, a vehicle 2 days ago, 3 times, and in this separate dealership. So that is where AI uses natural language to kind of generate information for someone. But the way that we identified that information is very basic OCR technology that is reading information off of funded document packages. And so we're, with our fraud network, very much easily able to identify somebody that is, a bust out situation where they just purchased, vehicles in real time a day ago or 2 days ago, or multiple vehicles, or a dealership reutilizing a utility bills for 11 months within one captive. So things like that are very standard. We're very transparent. We make sure that the AI is behaving with really high SLAs, 99%. And then for the cooler things, right, like creating documents and images using that generative AI, it's really more useful for people to consume that data. So being able to ask, information out of the data that we consumed. And we're very much sensitive because our customers are really the lenders. And so the lenders really consider dealers as their customers. So, we have dealer facing tools, we have dealer portals. So it's really important that, the lenders feel comfortable, they feel confident, and also that their agents can explain to the dealership what is happening in an appropriate ways. No dealer wants to be like, oh, some tool automated something. Like that's a very frustrating experience, right? So we just make sure that the lender and the agents on the lender's side really have all the information that they can. What I really think about our fraud tool from a document perspective is really cool because what it really does is that it allows you to see. So if we tell you that this person had a data collision, on a fraud network, we actually pop it out. We show you this is the document and this is your document you submitted. And so it's very clear. We redact in real time the NPPI information, but there is a real confidence evidence, right, that you have a retail installment contract and it's redacted real time. You see this other one. So that conversation becomes really, a person conversation with the dealership, right? You can say, hey, we have this document. It's very clear that this is happening. So how do we want to proceed? So it's actionable and very much like able to give those conversations, like the ability to be personable, right? And I always say like that kind of sells itself. Like you can tell me it's a template, and you usually back in the day, not even that long ago, probably 6 months ago, people would really they would go and search for templates. They would go and search for things, and you felt like, okay, this was fraudulent or not. Now, with the pixel level that we have, it actually pops out the actual paystub123.com. It shows you the template and shows you this is the template that they were using. This is the document you submitted. And so when we realize that, I feel like I said, those are really important conversations to have. And I think a lot of times when you don't know what the robot, the AI is doing back there, it's harder to have them. And so it's really important for the lenders as well as the dealers to feel confident that it's not just something happening in the back and they don't have no idea how it's processing.
Yeah, it's being used as a tool, and that's the important thing. So I always tell people like AI is a tool, and it's actually allows us to rehumanize a business transaction again. Like so we can step in front of it and engage and help our customers and actually help negate those issues, especially when it comes to security like you're dealing with.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's the point, right? Is that the technology helps you and it doesn't like hurt you or not give you the tools that you need to have those conversations. So that's kind of what we're thinking of. And like I said, we used to be very cautious, be like, do we really want to show so much information? But ultimately, that's how confident we are in the product and in what we're doing, because otherwise, you're leaving people out to just question things and worry more than they need to versus like, hey, this is the problem. This is the solution. How do we, what's the next action? How can we go from here and make something positive about it?
No, that's it's very impressive. Yeah, and that's the way to use it. I think a lot of people get like turned away, and that kind of goes right into my next question because you also lead customer success, and that's where the AI conversation gets very sensitive because a lot of leaders worry that AI means replacing people. And so, how do you ensure that AI supports your teams instead of replacing them when it comes not only on a leader level but also to your customers? How do you handle that conversation?
Yeah, that's funny. I actually was interviewing somebody the other day, and they were kind of worried. They were like, "Well, working for an AI company, like, where are you worried about it?" But ultimately, it's just enabling people to do their job better, and having people to be able to understand. Even in our day to day, we have a AI health score, and it's really great. Like it shows you all of the calls, it shows you the QBRs, it tells you kind of it tracks a lot of information, and then it consumes it in a very easy way. It tells you the score, and what's great about it is it has that natural language as well, and it explains like we gave them a satisfied score, and because of X, Y, and Z, and these are the things that we pulled into it that made it. And so you're like, okay, but we also have a human score. So my account managers also rate their customers customers as well in the same aspect, satisfied, not satisfied, so forth. And so it's good. And then we have a trigger that compares those two. And if there's something delta, then it alerts us and then we review it. So I think it's, utilizing both of those aspects, right? We're not going away from it, like I said. And I'm still kind of the type of leader that I love data, I love AI, but I still believe in the old school, put your finger up in the air sometimes and it feels good that way, right? Now, and I always say the same thing, in our customer success team, we still do side by sides. We still go out to the field. We do a lot of customer engagements on site with our customers. I feel like that's a really big part of the business, why we're so successful, because like I said, you can use technology in a million different ways, but if you don't know how people are using the technology, if they don't trust the technology, it's not great. It's not going to utilize, and you're not going to have the outcome that you expect. One of the biggest things is that we can automate the loan origination process a ton, but if
Yeah.
the underwriters or funders don't trust it, they're going to double check everything, and all of that automation that you're expecting, you're not going to see, right? So if they're still checking everything that Inform did and checking all of the questions, you're not going to see the automation. You're not going to be able to see the lift that you're having. And so we have to build that trust. We still have to go out, see the side by sides, and still side by sides are still very valuable to us, because I'll ask them, what are the top things, that three things that you wish you could fix, or what are the things that you see the most likely? And those are usually, things that we'll need to come back and fix. There may be bugs, or there's something that they had a misunderstanding. And so it's still critical to have that communication piece across all customers. Ultimately, the customers that we see that be very successful, they've really encompassed kind of digital transformation. So we see a lot of their kind of agents become more of product leaders, right? We see them understand how the product can be utilized, how can automation become. And so it kind of changes the way the organization worked before. So instead of just like kind of data entry people, you have people that are really saying, oh, we can do these types of things, we can automate, and there's always more work to be done, right? So there's better and better ways to do it. So they start working on kind of dealer management, dealer scoring. How can we improve the rewards? How can we get things better and faster to funders, to dealers, being able to get people paid faster? So you're able to just improve the process, and people are focused on what I would like to think is funner tasks, right? Like, how can I make a difference for a dealer, like versus just, answering, very basic questions like, what's wrong with this deal package? What's wrong with this? What's the status of my loans? Like, why can't I get, X, Y, and Z pass through? So those are all questions that we have to answer, and you should be able to get those answers really quickly versus having to be on the phone or through a bot or any of those things. And so we can give those answers immediately through automation, and then spend more time doing, those things like product enhancements, or the future of building out things, or, working on fraud, and, not wasting time going down those rabbit holes of like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So yeah.
Yeah. No, you're definitely a pure example of what good automation looks like, especially by keeping humans in the loop. So that's really important for sure. So did you ever have any shortfalls? Did you ever have any issues where it did fail you, or customers were just not comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think AI is not perfect, just like no human is perfect, right? So there's definitely shortfalls in everything, right? In every technology. I think I wouldn't be good at my job if I thought it was perfect, or that it's the end all, like be all solution, right? I will say is that we like to be able to automate a lot of the change requests or product enhancements, but we still do not allow unsupervised like enhancements to our product, right? For a number of reasons, like I said, because we're highly regulated, we still serve 7 of the top 10 lenders. So we're not going to just like let the AI go out there and do all kinds of things. And so there's still opportunity for AI to get improved. And I think that the shortcomings are, when AI is changing and creating all of these things, you have to just consistently have, other AI technology that's kind of combating it really in reality, right? So all of the generative AI, like the Nano Banana, like Gemini, all of the cool things that are coming out and creating all of these images, being able to create documents, like willy nilly, you have to then have pretty much a dedicated team doing the same thing of like, how are we going to track this? How are we going to identify that this is fraud? And so it's great and good, but there's just no way that anyone can keep up anymore. So like, unless you're going to have, I think 2 or 3 years ago, we always said like, should I buy or build, right? Should I really, invest in AI and start, having my own team that can help me and support me. And in reality, that's just not what I see lenders being able to be capable of, just because like I see our dedicated engineers that are tinkling with the coolest AI stuff and then also trying to implement all of these things. And if your team is doing anything else other than that, then they're like in BAU world, that's just not feasible, right? And so it's just kind of keeping pace of the AI technology. So I think it's a good, a pro and a con, right? Which is like it's really cool. There's a lot of technology, but if there is a learning curve on that technology, and then also not only the learning curve for the technology, but like the implementation of that technology and how you're going to actually utilize it. So, like I said, when you go and purchase AI, I think it's really critical on making sure you have the right team to be able to implement it, that they understand your use case, all of that good stuff, because otherwise you could buy all this AI technology, not have any idea how to use it, or try to scale your own team and then, bring on people and then not know how to like really support those people. So I think, having kind of a plan for the AI is really important. Otherwise, you kind of get in this cycle of implementation, and it's, people think it's really easy to implement AI, and it's not. It's not easy to implement AI. It's you really have, and to the scale of really transforming an organization. So we talk about, 45% straight through processing numbers, and that's really like a no touch, like a no deal jacket. No person's even touching it. And if somebody would have told me that 2 or 3 years ago, I would have not believed them. I would be like, that's not true. You still have to do X, you still have to do this. But to see those kind of numbers, you really have to understand the process. You have to understand how that technology works with other people's technology, what that means for everybody. If you don't have those kind of true implementation goals, understand how the AI, I can definitely imagine how people got burned with like, old school OCR, how they kind of like, were sold this huge thing and then weren't able to really, live by it. So I think that's one of the critical aspects is it's hard to keep up with AI if you don't really have people that love it, like live it, and then also to the implementation. It's real critical.
No, you just organically went right into my other question was what do leaders underestimate when they roll out automation? It's fail of implementation the
Yeah.
right way.
Yeah, I think implementation is really critical. So my team actually sits on, we from sales they hand off to professional services, but my team is actually sitting there from day one from that handoff. And even though we're not actually implementing it from the professional services side, and it's really just to make sure that I tell my team, pretend you're the executive in the role. Like you signed that contract, your name's on the line. Like, you paid this money. What are your expectations? How do you want to achieve this? So having that kind of thought process of like, hey, I want to make sure I get my money's worth. I'm going to start getting billed this time. I need to do X, Y, and Z. And like making sure that that timeline is very clear to the people that are doing the day-to-day work as well as the executive is pretty much really critical in that implementation time. And then being very transparent on, your organization better, your credit risk gates, kind of your, AI gates, all of the different things. So having a good expectation of like what that looks like from the beginning to end is really important as well.
No, I fully agree, and that was well said for sure. Now, for to switch gears towards like your customers, your partners. So, if an automotive group or lender was listening and thinking, "We want to do this right," where should they start? What would you say?
So I would say just, like I said, understand your priorities. What are you trying to achieve? Are you trying to focus on dealers? Are you trying to focus on, getting more deals in house? Are you trying to, that you're going to, purchase a new portfolio and you're going to have to service these loans and, originate all of these deals? Like, how can you, onboard all of this without having to staff up, 100 times, what you have currently? So I always say start with your own problem, start with your own focus, and then see what is the best way to answer or address that. And then I would also say be really focused on industry. The references are important. Like know what other people are doing. I used to work for Betty at SC, and she always says, "I don't want to be the first one, but I don't want to be the last one." Right? And so that's very true across the board. Which is like there's a reason why everyone's kind of uses the same things after a while, is because that's probably working for most people. Right? There's not probably one thing that miraculously worked here, and then nobody else is really taking it on. So I would always say, like, make sure you talk to your references, understand how that's important for something that you're implementing similarly.
Mhm.
Ask the questions, don't be scared. I mean, I consistently am on the call and I answer the same questions over and over again. I'll answer them slightly different people for slightly different teams. But that's my job. And I think, nobody should be scared to ask the questions, because I think that's really important to make sure you feel comfortable with that implementation, before you put your name on the dot. There's a lot of times where like, I want your cell phone number. And if this breaks, like, I'm going to call you, Jessica. And I think like that's still really good because that's what auto is about, right? Like you should have my cell phone number. And if it breaks, you should call me. Like, and so if you don't have that relationship with the people that are implementing it, it should be, like I said, like an extension of your team, because you want that. And that's the way auto is. And if you don't have that, I think there's more problems, right? You're trying to fit some technology into an infrastructure that's probably not built that way.
No, I agreed. So because you just said at NADA, you're already talking about 2027. So already we're just beginning of the year. It's already flying. But what trends should leaders be paying attention to over the next 12 and 18 months, since you already started getting peeks underneath the blanket and heard the talk? What's coming down the pipeline, or what do you personally feel that we should be paying attention to in your industry?
Yeah. So I think, automation is still really, really prevalent. I think, people are talking more, a couple of years back, everybody was like all about EV. I don't think like EV is as much as it was, before. I think a lot of the scale of how can we do EV in a different way? How can we green version, but maybe not in the original perspective that we thought before, right? So that kind of has been falling into some of those automation tracks, right? Is like, how can we have this lens of green across automation? And so kind of heard that, in the tracks. And I think that that's coming up because I think we wanted to do right with EV. We wanted to have legislation that came out a couple of years back. And I think that really, we saw Ford, we saw Toyota, everybody tried that aspect of it. And I think the same way with like the, auto navigation and really trying to do that. I think we'll probably see some of that green lens across and maybe, kind of more of that focus, maybe in a couple of years with legislation moving that way. But I think kind of that's a good trend. And I also think like, how can we do automation better, right? How can we make sure that the technology is keeping up? Because in a couple of years, some of these cooler vehicles are going to have pieces that are, failing, or batteries that are not working, or the technology. All of that technology now is so expensive to keep up with. Like, what does that look like, right? Because the vehicles become more tech savvy, they become more expensive, and then there's a population that can't afford, $1,000 payment. So kind of what does that look like? And I think there'll be some more vehicles that are lesser cost. And what does that look like from a technology perspective? Are we able to keep up with the technology, and still have, price points that are lower, for everyday access? Because those vehicles that are, getting people to work right now for the lower socioeconomic class in a couple of years are going to be turning out. They're going to need new vehicles, and kind of what is in the market for them as well. I think it's going to be critical, because did the technology, from a couple of years live up? Is it lasting to the effects that we need? And it's a lot of new technology, right? So I think those are going to be some major effects coming in from 2027, 2028.
No, agreed. It's going to be interesting because we've all kind of been in this boom only, like you said, like a few years. So now it's all going to start catching up with us as we keep making steps further. What's behind us that still needs to come to fruition. So it's going to be interesting to see those different gaps. And I feel like with technology, they're putting too big of gaps in the affordability of vehicles as well, which is going to get very difficult for, your middle class, especially, which is the lifeblood of our country.
Yes, exactly. And the ones that utilize vehicles, that need the vehicles to get, to work and be able to provide, like you said, the lifeblood of our economy. So I think it's really critical of making sure that we know where that gap is and how we're going to, meet in the middle.
Yes. So how does regulation like ethics and governance factor into AI growth in your opinion?
Probably a year and a half ago, we saw a lot of new trends of AI governance, and really talking about like, instead of just having, model governance was really big. Probably 5 years ago, we still see a lot of model governance, and then we were kind of seeing AI governance. Now with kind of change in legislation, I've seen a little less, uptick of so much of the AI. So we're kind of in the middle where there is governance, architecture review board, but probably not as specific as we were really getting into like AI specific governance. And I think now, it's just really focused on your same kind of third party evaluation, vendor management, making sure that you're doing right by your lenders and customers, but not so much very focused on AI.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So where do you see is the biggest gap between leaders and laggards forming? Are you starting to see companies like yourself pull away and other ones kind of being left behind because you are adopting these, key tools that are making business easier, but even more enriching for your customers because you as a human get more time with them instead of doing, like you said, all the diddle daddle work on the back end?
Yeah, I think all of our products really come from our customers. So really when we started, our bread and butter was income validation. We started with a really large lender doing their income validation on their dealer portal. And that really gave the opportunity to do faster funding for dealers, and it really resonated across the market. And we really expanded to straight through processing, which was, everybody was talking about it, everybody wants it, everybody loves it. And then really they were like, hey, you see all this data, you see all this information. Why can't you help us from a fraud perspective? I think from knowing our customers really need like really well, it really helps us build out our product roadmap because we're able to answer a need, right? Where I think where some technology companies come into effect is that they love the technology, right? They love AI, they think it's really cool, and it is, right? But they're building stuff and maybe it doesn't solve a need that is really apparent, or if you don't know the business, it doesn't resonate in that one-to-one level for you. And so it's harder to really say this matches what I need, right? Versus, hey, right now we have funders manually looking at documents, they're manually trying to find paystub123.com and match them up. Like that's a very clear need, right? If I can say it pops up and it shows me exactly, like that answers that need for me, and I can let go of that today task. And then from a non-documentary perspective, yeah, like it just makes sense. Like I know a person used to do this, so now a person doesn't have to do it. Like it's just like very easy to understand, right? And so I think from like our expansion into non-documentary fraud, it really makes sense. Okay, somebody just purchased a vehicle and you saw that purchase and you saw it over here, like it's very black and white. That's a bust out. Like I think it was harder before because a lot of the non-documentary fraud was like ifs or buts, or you had to still read between the lines, like, hey, they have six different credit pools, but did they go to six different dealerships? Like who knows, maybe, I don't know, like so there's a lot of like what ifs there. And so knowing like the fraud network and kind of realizing those are like actual things that you can have those actions, why I think are really critical. Listening to our customers is still our number one reason of how our product roadmap is built out. So I think it's really critical to be able to bring that back to the people that love the AI and the technology and are super smarter than me, so that they can build it out. But I'm like, no, I think it should be like this because this is what they're saying, and like, does it address that? And I think those are two pieces of the puzzle that really make sense a lot of times.
Yeah, I mean, you're the frontline person. You're the one listening, hearing, and absorbing it all in. So I think it's really important because we might not be the computer gurus, but we're the fact checkers with the everyday consumer. And so I
Yeah,
think that's huge to align that because then it just becomes a bunch of robots telling us what to do, but it might not then be beneficial.
yeah,
So
yeah,
how do we relate to that?
definitely. Yep.
Yeah, so let's do a quick, fun, like Jessica reality check. So, first thing that comes to mind, most impactful AI capability right now in your world.
I think the note takers are. I love them. Like, right. I'm not like the super type A personality. I don't know if you got that or not. I love those people really feel the need that I don't feel like so the note taker is really beneficial for me. I love that it's like, be able to like record everything and get all my notes down. I can like, if I forget something, go back to it. So, I love that tool. I think it's really important. And, when you're not reading the notes, and it allows the people to be present, right? So, I used to try to write down, or hold on, let me like, get this down. And so I think there's like a lot of relief that I know I won't miss something, but I can really be present in the conversation. So I think that's really important.
Well, that is so true. I really thought about that. Like note taking, we're imprinting it in our brains because we're writing it down, but it does kind of detract you from the conversation itself and miss out on the engagement.
Yeah, definitely. And I am like, when I do take notes, like I'm like, looking down, like you do all the things you're not supposed to do, right? Like not engage people, like not look at them, like things that people care about, right? And so definitely like the note takers.
No, it's good. Okay, so most overhyped AI buzzword.
I think the generative AI and like knowing, like I just feel like generative AI, other than like images, like it's not as like cool and like stuff that people are doing. But yeah, I think that one.
Yeah, I feel like AI in general is really misunderstood, where like they all use it so loosely, not really even knowing what it does. But I love that you'll actually put it into your repertoire and how you do business, but more in a security way, which helps negates a lot of headaches down the road. So that's really amazing that y'all have found it and really utilize it to its potential. So for one process every automotive business should automate yesterday, what do you think? So if you have these tools, you like them, what do you, if you could have every automotive like client that you're working with, what tool would be like, you need this and you should have had this yesterday?
I think getting the instant feedback from, when you upload a document and tells you exactly like what's missing, it's not signed, like what is the date wrong? Like we should also be doing that. Like nobody wants to review contracts. Like everybody wants to know what's right or wrong. We all make mistakes, right? Even the technology makes mistakes. So I think that just makes sense across the board, right? Like why would I not just want to immediately within, a minute know what's in my contract, what's missing? What's the status of that? Like, is the license not legible? Like, the dates off? Or is going to miss up? Having that first pass, that review up front is really great for everyone. I think it just makes the process a lot easier, more transparent for the customer. Why wouldn't you want to do that when your customer's in front of you, like with you, versus like in a couple of days, nobody wants to track down anybody. Nobody wants to send a text message, a license or, all of that. Like we walk out the dealership and we think it's all done, right? So if it's not all done, like I don't want to answer a text. I don't want to answer a call. Like it's done. I have the car. It's in my garage. Like I'm I'm over it. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's so true. And I guess it even helps us as a consumer, looking on the opposite side of, more or less like knowing what the fine print is, knowing what we're signing, what we're obliged to. So it's very interesting to see how that's going to adapt and change. I haven't bought a car in a while, but I'm curious to see what that experience would look like now using AI.
Yeah, I think like it's kind of the same experience. You just kind of hopefully that it's faster and that you're more prepared as a consumer. Your dealer is more prepared. So just like overall faster and better experience for everyone. You can kind of go in there, feel like you're empowered, right? I think, at least me, a couple of years ago, back even in the auto industry, sometimes I'd go to a dealership and feel like, man, I don't know, am I getting a good deal or not? Or like, is this like, you're just like, a couple of years ago, I didn't know like, okay, was that a good experience or not a good experience? Like, I don't feel that great, but I do have a car now. Like, so I think, maybe it's just with age or with time in the industry, but I think that's what, everybody wants is a good transaction that people are coming back and feel good about what they did and what they purchased and want to buy another one later on.
No, I agree. But so this is my favorite one. One thing AI should never replace. You already kind of hit on it, but I would love for you to embellish it on it.
I think it shouldn't replace like your human interactions, right? Like it shouldn't replace this. Like I said, helps you take notes, do all the good things so you can make the eye contact, so you can shake the hand, so you can really, get to know people in that aspect. So I think AI does the things that we don't want it to do. Really, it's like those things like, I don't want to do my yard. I'm going to put that out. Somebody wants to do, they love to do that. So I think AI should do the tasks that you don't want to be doing, make you more productive, and you should be able to do what you want to do, which is have those engagements, have the relationships and making sure your customers are coming back.
Yes, keep it human as much as you can. So, Jessica, this has been incredibly insightful. I love learning about everything you have to say. And to close us out, what's one piece of advice you'd give leaders who want to embrace AI without breaking their business or their culture?
That's a really good question. I think, like I said, I think trust yourself, right? Put that finger up in the air, know what you are, AI doesn't change who you are, what you want as an organization or a company, and it doesn't change your problem. So whatever you're trying to solve, whatever your kind of, and like I said, it matters about your organization. I always say like, your organization better, if it's going to take 6 months to clear a gate, if it's going to take, like 2 months to just get everybody in, or they expect everything to be up and running in a month and a half. So, being very clear with like what your expectations are and what you want and owning that, right? Just like there should be no fault with like, hey, I'm going to be in a really slow bank and you're going to take forever with vendor management. That's great. That's fine. I'm okay with that. Or, hey, it better be up and running in a month and a half or I'm going to fire you. Like, I think those are just like just be very honest and clear with what you're having and making sure that the technology meets those needs, right? Otherwise, it's not a good relationship for anybody starting out with not having those like clear ideas and perspective. So knowing what your problem is, how you want to solve it is really important. And then two, just knowing your own, industry and your own organization so that you can at least tell somebody that the other way so that they're like, hey, you're going to become part of my organization, and these are kind of your expectations. So definitely think it's an interview with technology these days.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely love that. And I want to thank you again for joining us and sharing such a grounded, real world perspective. I could tell you're such a great human with good means. And I love that how you have passion behind what you're doing. And you're like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't believe in it, if I wouldn't get it myself. So thank you for bringing that to the public. And for anyone listening who wants to learn more about IQ, informed IQ, or follow your work, where's the best place to connect with you or how to follow you?
Yeah, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Jessica Pialo Gonzalez, or you can follow us also on inform.io.
Beautiful. And to our listeners, stay tuned for the next episode of the Juggernaut AI Solutions podcast. We're here to just continue breaking down the walls of others and learning their story and how real businesses are using AI to win. Thank you for tuning in to Real Tech Talk.
Hi, thank you so much, Stephanie.